Are you tired of struggling to build impressive calves despite countless hours at the gym? Get ready to unlock the secrets to explosive calf growth backed by science. In today's video, we're going to be discussing 5 tips that will accelerate your calf growth, and I'll explain how you can directly incorporate them into your workout routine. Implementing all 5 of these tips are essential, so make sure you stick around to the end of the video because missing one could make the difference between seeing your dream calves or staying where you're at. Welcome back to another video. I'm Brendan Martinez. I'm currently getting my doctorate in physical therapy. And before we jump into the 5 tips, let's do a quick anatomy review of the calves. Your calves are made up of 2 big muscles. You have your gastrocs and you have your soleus. Your gastrocs are more superficial, meaning they're the outermost muscle, and this tends to be the muscle that most people associate your calves with. Then you have your soleus, which is deep to the gastroc, and basically they both perform plantarflexion, which is when you are pointing your toes down, but the mechanism of when they are firing is different. So let me explain how you can bias one versus the other. Whenever you perform a calf raise with your knees straight, you're going to be primarily working the gastrocs. Alternatively, whenever you have your knees bent, you're going to be primarily working the soleus. And this is because of where the muscles cross the knee joint, and we won't go too in depth on all that, but these are the general principles to know. Many people at the gym will train their calves keeping their knees straight throughout every exercise, which is a huge mistake because you are neglecting the soleus, which leads me to my first tip, which is training your soleus. Because the soleus lies underneath the gastrocs, increasing the size of your soleus will in turn push out your gastrocs, adding mass and size to your calves overall. Using just about any seated calf raise exercise, it will directly target your soleus, which will exponentially increase your calf size. Without going too deep into muscle physiology, your soleus is made up primarily of type 1 muscle fibers, which means type 1 is they are slow twitch and they're relatively resistant to fatigue. Because of this fact, we're going to train our soleus at a higher volume, so we're going to want to shoot for that 12 to 15 rep range and also aim for 4 to 5 sets. If you do soleus training at the beginning of the workout, this can help pre-fatigue the type 1 muscle fibers, making the type 2 muscle fibers execute the rest of the workout, making them work a little harder. It's also important to note that your calves and your soleus are very strong muscles. And this makes sense because you're essentially performing mini calf raises throughout the duration of the day when you're walking. And if these muscles weren't resistant to fatigue, you would not get very far. So be sure to challenge and push yourself and choose a weight that will put you in that RPE range of 7 to 9. And RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion, and this will in turn lead to more muscle growth in the long run. Now that we finished tip number 1, let's jump into tip number 2, which is prioritizing eccentric training. Studies have shown time and time again that eccentric training is superior to concentric when it comes to muscle growth. However, this is where you tend to see the most compensations from both novice and also experienced lifters. However, before we jump further into this point, let's do a quick review of both concentric and eccentric contraction. Concentric contractions refer to tension or contraction in the muscle when it's shortening. Alternatively, eccentric contractions is when there's tension or contraction in a muscle as it is lengthening. A good way to visualize the difference between these two is during a standard calf raise. The way up encompasses the concentric phase of the exercise, while the way down encompasses the eccentric phase. Now that we know the difference between these two, let's talk about how you can incorporate eccentric training into your program. It's common to see a lot of people at the gym performing calf raises just like this. Very quick on the way up and little to no control on the way down, and just allowing gravity to take you back to the starting position. What we should be doing is controlling the eccentric phase and aiming for 3 to 4 seconds on the descent or the way back down. This small change will make a huge difference and it will accelerate your calf growth, and I promise you, give this a try for 1 set and you will feel the burn. Now that we wrapped up tip number 2, let's jump into tip number 3, which is implementing progressive overload. This is a core principle of bodybuilding, and it should be a staple in every lifting program to allow for safe and efficient progression. Progressive overload is the principle of gradually increasing the stress placed on the skeletal muscle and also gradually increasing the intensity that you're performing. The gold standard of this principle is to increase the load by 10% each week. Now, it's important to note that this will not always be obtainable, but it is a good guideline to follow. For example, if you're performing barbell calf raises on the Smith machine with 100 pounds, the following week you should aim for 110 pounds because that is a 10% increase. Another important thing to note with progressive overload is that you are not increasing intensity, frequency, and volume all at once. You are only changing one variable per week. Now let me give you an example of how you can increase your volume using progressive overload. During week 1, you can perform 10 to 12 reps of calf raises. Then during week 2, we can perform 12 to 14 reps. And on week 3, we can perform 15 reps. Once again, this principle is going to be the same regardless of what variable you choose to change, but aiming for that 10% increase is the gold standard. Before we jump into tip number 4, if you're enjoying the video so far, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and also drop a comment down below if you have any questions about the content covered so far. Now let's jump into tip number 4, which is optimizing your training volume. It's important to know what the most effective training volume is for your calves so you can optimize how you're training. Research has found time and time again that excessive training volume may impede muscle adaptations. So it's important to know what the optimal training volume is so we can avoid overtraining. Starting off this principle, let's talk about MEV, or minimal effective volume for your calves. MEV refers to the minimum number of sets per week that is sufficient to stimulate muscle growth. Pertaining to your calves, the MEV is 8 sets per week. Now this isn't the ideal number of sets per week. However, if life is busy and you really can't get to the gym much, you need to at least get 8 sets per week for your calves if you want to see any growth. Now let's talk about MAV, or maximal adaptive volume, which is the amount of work where the most muscle growth will happen. With calves, your MAV should be between 12 to 16 sets per week. Lastly, let's discuss MRV, which is the maximal recoverable volume. MRV refers to the volume that you could perform that you can fully recover from without taking any hit in your performance. And once again, pertaining to the calves, the MRV is 20 sets per week. Now that we've discussed all these parameters, we know that we should at least be hitting 8 sets per week, and we shouldn't be performing more than 20 sets per week. That wraps up tip number 4. Now let's jump into the final tip rounding off the list, which is varying your calf exercises. This is also a key principle in resistance training, but it's especially important when training our calves. Varying your calf exercises will target different angles and recruit different muscle fibers within the calf muscle itself. This will ensure that your calves are thoroughly engaged, leading to accelerated and equal growth. Implementing all 5 of these tips will accelerate your calf growth and lead to the well-defined and sculpted calves you've been dreaming of. Be sure not to miss any of these tips, because missing one can make all the difference between you getting your dream calves or staying where you've been. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more, and also hit push notifications so you never miss an upload. I'll see you all in the next video.